So my name is Eboo Patel. I'm an American Muslim. I'm the founder and president of an organization called Interfaith Youth Corps. Proud to have published this new book called Sacred Ground: Pluralism, Prejudice, and the Promise of America. Proud that it's Aslan Media Book of the Month. I think you can really read American history as a story of the forces of pluralism defeating the forces of prejudice. What I do in this book is to kind of examine the anti-Muslim prejudice that we're experiencing right now, where it's coming from, what the sources of it are. I compare it especially to anti-Catholic prejudice of earlier eras, and I make a call to people everywhere to be interfaith leaders and to be the forces of pluralism that are going to defeat this particular prejudice, largely so that America can achieve its promise as a nation of pluralism. I think that there's a really interesting comparison between the anti-Muslim prejudice we're seeing right now and anti-Catholic prejudice of even as recently as a half century ago. One interesting parallel is that this notion that any Catholic institution, whether it's a school or a hospital or a social service agency, is really a Trojan horse for papal domination within. And that was one of the things that Senator Kennedy was accused of when he was running for president in 1960. And of course, where would America be without Catholic institutions? What if the Know Nothing Party and the Ku Klux Klan had won, and America had believed that every Catholic institution was only a Trojan horse for papal domination? There are 600 Catholic hospitals in America. There are 7,000 Catholic elementary and high schools. There's 230 Catholic universities. This is a significant part of American civil society. And Muslims are poised to begin making similar kinds of public contributions. And part of what this book is a look back to the Ground Zero Mosque debate we had a couple years ago, the Cordoba House debate. And part of what I argue is that Cordoba House was one of the largest and most important Muslim kind of public institution building projects in America. And Imam Faisal and Daisy would frequently compare it to a YMCA or to a Jewish community center. And so I think for America to achieve its promise as a nation that welcomes the contributions of people of all backgrounds and nurtures cooperation between them, it has to overcome the current prejudice that we're looking at when it comes to Muslims. Interfaith leader, in my view, is a category like human rights activist, like environmentalist, like social entrepreneur. And if we're going to have an interfaith movement in America, it's going to be powered by interfaith leaders, just like the environmental movement is powered by environmentalists, the human rights movement is powered by human rights activists. In other words, there needs to be an identity category that's associated with the movement. So what is an interfaith leader? An interfaith leader is someone who has the framework, the knowledge base, and the skill set to build bridges of understanding and cooperation between people who orient around religion differently. An interfaith leader is somebody who has a sense of the history of interfaith cooperation in America and across the world. Everything from the notion that Martin Luther King Jr. was deeply inspired by an Indian Hindu, Mahatma Gandhi, and also a Buddhist monk in Thich Nhat Hanh, and one of his closest companions in civil rights work was a Jewish rabbi, Abraham Joshua Heschel. Everything from that to the role that interfaith cooperation played in freeing South Africa from apartheid. Interfaith leaders have an appreciative knowledge of other religious traditions. They know, for example, that mercy is a central, if not the central value in Islam. They know about the Jewish view of repairing the world. They know a little bit about engaged Buddhism and an appreciative knowledge of these different traditions. An interfaith leader has a knowledge of their own theology of interfaith cooperation or their own ethic of interfaith cooperation. They can articulate how their Buddhist belief or their Hindu belief or their Christian belief would inspire and, in fact, require them to be an interfaith leader. So there's this knowledge base associated with interfaith leadership, and there's this skill set, the ability to bring people who orient around religion differently together in what we call a science of interfaith cooperation, and that's also detailed in this book. I think that Muslims have this really powerful role to play in this work. And actually, the launching pad for the book, in so many ways, was a phone call that I got from Sheikh Hamza Youssef during Ramadan of 2010, right in the middle of the Ground Zero Mosque crisis that we were in. And I told him about how angry I was with what was happening to Imam Faisal and Daisy, and how frustrated I was that what amounted to a Muslim YMCA was frequently referred to as a terrorist command center, especially on outlets like Fox News. And Sheikh Hamza said to me, this isn't the time for anger. This isn't the time for despair. This is the time that change agents are yearning for. Our nation is molten and can be shaped. And part of what Sheikh Hamza was saying to me was, we Muslims shouldn't be responding to ugliness with equal ugliness, right? Or to anger with despair. We ought to be responding with beauty. We ought to be responding with hope. This is a time when people are actually paying attention to what Muslims are saying. And when people see ugliness and they see beauty, they notice the distance between those and they choose beauty, right? So in a counterintuitive way, at a time of anti-Muslim prejudice, people are paying even closer attention to what Muslims are saying and doing. And we have this really profound opportunity to not only change how people view Islam, but also to help America move even closer to its promise. And one of the things that I detail in Sacred Ground is how African Americans throughout the course of American history have responded to their oppression in America. And it was largely by saying that America was not a lie, it was a broken promise, and by giving their bodies and their blood to fix it. And one of the people that I quote in Sacred Ground is Langston Hughes, who said, "America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be." And I think that that's a position that Muslims find themselves in, and it's a response that it would be deeply Islamic and also very important for America. I'm proud to be the founder and president of this organization, Interfaith Youth Corps. You can check us out at ifyc.org. There's a ton of resources on that website for interfaith leaders. I would say you can boil Interfaith Youth Corps down to just a few lines. Our 30-year mission is to make interfaith cooperation a social norm, which is to say that interfaith cooperation ought to be like multiculturalism or service learning or human rights or environmentalism. It ought to be woven into the fabric of American society. There ought to be days of interfaith service on campuses and in cities across the country. There ought to be interfaith exchanges between faith communities. Part of the definition of being educated in America ought to be having an appreciative knowledge of different traditions. So that's interfaith cooperation as a social norm. We have a three-part strategy for how to get there. One is to advance a narrative of interfaith cooperation at the heart of the American project. Clearly, Sacred Ground is a part of advancing that narrative. One of the things the book does is tell stories of everyone from, George Washington and his letter to the Hebrew congregation of Newport, Rhode Island, all the way through Abraham Lincoln and Jane Addams and Martin Luther King Jr. and their interfaith leadership. So lifting up that narrative of American interfaith cooperation is very important. The second thing we do as an organization is we partner with college campuses to be ecologies of interfaith cooperation. And we believe that some institution is going to have to lead the way in college campuses because they're diverse, because they care about the leadership of young people, because they care about nurturing the identities of different groups, but also building bridges between them, because they advance a knowledge base for the whole society, because they nurture the new generation of leaders. They're an ideal ecology to kind of model interfaith cooperation. And the final thing that we do is we train, nurture, network, mobilize a generation of interfaith leaders, first as college students through something we call the Better Together campaign on college campuses, and then into their lives and their vocations and their careers. And so we follow them as they become associate chaplains at colleges or go to work in philanthropy or go become doctors and lawyers, and make sure that they can stay interfaith leaders and have an impact bridging different religious communities to serve the common good. I'm excited about this book, and I'm excited that it's finding an audience of folks who are looking at the madness going on when it comes to religious conflict or religious violence or religious prejudice, who might be Hindus or humanists or Buddhists or Baha'is, and who are experiencing prejudice against their own community. They're watching Muslims and Mormons and evangelicals and Catholics experience their own prejudice, and they're saying, listen, this is not America, this is not Islam, this is not Christianity. We can do better than this, and if we're going to do better, we're going to do it together, right? And that's one of the themes of Interfaith Youth Corps. It's better together, and it's one of the themes of Sacred Ground. Thank you for choosing this as an Aslan Media Book of the Month, and I hope that your audience finds it an interesting and inspiring read.